Welcome back, everyone. Have you ever been inspired to build something massive in Minecraft only to start up your world, get your tools and resources, and end up with no idea where to start? Then this video is for you. Today, we are going to cover 5 steps that you can use to go from building small builds to mega builds. So let's get started. Oh, and before we go too far, hit that subscribe button and like the video. Thanks so much. So what makes a build a mega build? The first thing to consider is the number of blocks used. Small build is going to be about 100 blocks. A medium build is going to be about 1,000 blocks. A large build would start at about 10,000 blocks, which means you're not going to hit a mega build until you get to 100,000 blocks. If you hit 1 million blocks, well then that's a super mega build. But to truly have a mega build, it's going to take more than just having a lot of blocks. It's also about making it look impressive, and that leads us to the 5 steps that we are going to be covering today for building bigger in Minecraft. We are going to be talking about using inspiration, how to design builds, and tools that can help you along the way. Let's get started with step number 1, inspiration. Inspiration comes in many forms. Maybe you're inspired by a build from your favorite YouTuber, or you can be inspired by buildings that you see in real life or from images you find on Google. But the focus for today is not so much on where to find inspiration, but tips on how to use it. When you're just starting out, you can learn a lot about building by finding a picture and recreating it in Minecraft. But you may run into copyright issues if you share your build, so to be safe, just use this method to practice your building skills. Once you start to develop your building style, you can then start using reference images for other purposes. For example, I used reference images to understand how to build these flying buttresses because my first attempt was not great. Reference images can also be used for more than just the design of a build. They can also be used to create atmosphere. For example, when I was planning out this castle, I did a lot of research into what an ice castle might look like, and that led me to use lots of blues and blacks for the block palette, so that when I turned on shaders, set the time to night, and added a snowstorm, I got the exact atmosphere that I was going for when I started. Now that we're ready to use inspiration to build massive projects, we can turn to step number 2, planning. Planning is key when starting a mega build. If you're placing over 100,000 blocks, you don't want to have to tear it down and rebuild if you decide you don't like your design halfway through building it. There are a couple of different ways that you can plan out a build. The first way I like to call the 10% method. Basically, that is where you build only a fraction of your final project so you can test out different design elements. A while back, I built this End Island project, but when I was designing it, this was all I did for my initial planning. The 10% method gets you building faster in your survival world, but the downside is that you do not have an exact idea of how many blocks you are going to need, which means you may end up having to go resource gathering halfway through your project. Which leads us to the second way to plan out your build, the 100% method. As the name implies, this is where you plan out the entire project before you start building in your survival world. I've got lots of examples where I planned out the entire project, like this one, or this one, or this one. The benefit of this method is that you know exactly what types of blocks you need and how many, which means you can collect everything first and then focus on building. You're now inspired, you've decided to plan out your build, but now you're wondering, how do you design the plan? The answer is our third step, using a creative world. When I first started playing in Minecraft, I did not plan out my builds, and they definitely showed that lack of planning. Once I started using a creative world to practice my building methods, my designs started to show a huge improvement. So let's take a look at how to make the most of a creative world. One common practice I see in a lot of how to build videos is combining squares and circles to create the outline for your build. This is a good start for small projects, but when you have a massive build, you need to think about things on a larger scale. When I was planning my base over on the Project Nodinium server, this is the layout that I put together. I used these blocks on the side to make sure that the length of the walls were in multiples of 5. I used 5 because I knew that arches were going to feature heavily in the final design, and 5 is ideal for creating arches. Now it's time to figure out the proportions for your build. You don't want to end up with a build that looks squashed or stretched, so let's look at some general ideas to keep in mind. You'll want to have the first level of the build be taller than the levels above it. Next, you want to add some height variation to the build. How you do this depends on the theme of your project, but it can usually be accomplished by changing roof angles or adding additional stories to different parts of the build. Depending on the style you're going for, you will want to try different things. If it's a medieval fantasy build, then you're going to want turrets with pointy roofs. If it's a Greco-Roman design, you're going to have lots of straight lines and pillars. The next way to use a creative world is finding the right block palette. There will be a lot of trial and error at this point because finding the right balance of colors is very challenging. First, You want to start by picking out your primary block. Then you'll want to find blocks that will blend with it to add texturing. And finally, you should find a good accent block that will help add contrast and color to the build. Once you have the proportions down and your block palette picked out, it's time to start planning out the details. With my Project Nodinium base, I broke down the layout into pieces and designed them separately. When building on a large scale, depth is important. So I went with walls that were 3 blocks deep to allow for lots of variation in depth and detail to be added in. As I went along, I started to figure out the design elements that would feature throughout the build, and the end result came together very well. So you are now a pro at using a creative world, you're designing your builds, but you might be thinking, do I have to place all these blocks by hand? It's now time to talk about our 4th step, building tools. Before we look at the available tools, it's important to remember that the tools by themselves will not make a build look good. They only help with making the process of building easier and faster. I will also not be doing a deep dive into these tools, but I have included links in the description to videos that do look at them in detail if you want to learn more. Alright, let's take a look at what's available. The first tool we are going to look at does not require any mods. These are commands that are built into Minecraft. The 2 primary commands that will help you are the fill command and the clone command. The fill command allows you to select 2 points and fill in the space between them with blocks. The clone command allows you to select 2 points and copy all the blocks in between them. You can then paste these blocks by selecting a 3rd point. The easiest way to select the points is to have a block at the point you wish to select. Then with your cursor pointed at the block, you can hit the tab key and it will enter the coordinates of that block automatically. Then copy that text, go to the next block, paste the text, tab to enter the second block's coordinates, and you're set. These commands are especially useful during the planning phase when you are just working out the proportions of your build. Now let's look at some mods. The first mod we are going to look at is World Edit. It's been around for a long time and can be used to do a lot of different things. You can use it to create shapes, build custom terrain, and add textures. I would definitely recommend looking at some tutorials before trying to use it for the first time, but with a little practice, World Edit can help quickly add in a lot of detail to your projects. The second mod we are going to look at is Axiom. This is a newer mod that adds a wide range of tools for creating and designing builds and also includes a new overlay. The learning curve is pretty steep, but the more you learn, the more you can do with it. I have found it to be really helpful with creating custom terrain, as you can easily add in shapes that meld together. There are paint tools to add textures and modeling tools to help create a very organic result. The last mod we are going to look at is Litematica. While you may be very familiar with how it is used to create schematics to recreate a build, it can also be helpful during the design phase of a build. Instead of using World Edit or vanilla commands to copy and paste, you can use Litematica to copy and paste portions of a build. I have found that it is helpful to use Litematica for this because you can see exactly what you are selecting and where you are placing it. And in the end, you can easily create a new structure using existing designs. So far, we've covered using inspiration, planning out your builds, making use of a creative world, and a variety of tools that can help you along the way. The last step we are going to look at today is the most important step, patience. If you want to create a massive Minecraft build, it will not happen in a couple of hours or even a couple of days. I built my first mega base before I started my YouTube channel, and I would work on it for a couple of hours every weekend. And at that pace, it took me over a year and a half to complete. Once I started my YouTube channel, I put in more concentrated time on my projects, but it still requires a significant number of hours to complete the builds. Building the exterior of my Project Nodinium base took 58 hours, this End Island project took over 80 hours, and this wheat farm took over 100 hours. And that doesn't even include all the time spent designing the projects. Which is all to say, when you are considering a massive project, be patient. It takes time to plan out your build and design it. It takes time to gather resources and place blocks, and placing tens of thousands of blocks can get repetitive. With that said, when you've finished building something massive, it is an incredible feeling. So stick with it. And there you have it, 5 steps for building bigger in Minecraft. The key that holds all 5 together is practice. If you want to get better at building, you must build and build and build and build and build. Try new things, try old things, experiment with blocks you never use, find new ways of using old favorites, and if you do, you will be able to build amazing and fantastic builds that will be the envy of all your friends. But that is where we are going to leave it for today. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And until next time, see ya later.